Shalom, welcome to the Jewish View. My name is Rabbi Nachman Simon with the Chabad House of Delmar, together with my co-host Mark Warnich at jbiztechphilly.com, statewide news service, and now columnist for the Jewish Press.
Right, I'm having fun with all three assignments. My column in the Jewish Press is called Albany Beat, and I talk about how government relates to the Jewish community, or doesn't, as the case may be. But someone who does relate to the Jewish community very well is our guest today, Senator Neil Breslin from the 44th Senate District. Welcome to the Jewish View.
I'm delighted to be here.
So good to see you.
Rabbi, good to see you again.
Everything's good.
Great for you to be here.
Not only Albany, but Delmar is.
That's right, and Rensselaer County, and Albany County and Rensselaer County. So I wanted to ask you, because we've had Senate legislators on after the session, what's your report card of how this past session went?
I thought it was an average session. The amount of bills we passed was down dramatically, but that's in part because there's relative gridlock in the Senate now. It's very close in numbers, who controls, and it was the first real full year for John Flanagan. I think did an admirable job for the Republicans. So I think by and large the legislation we passed was good legislation and not a lot of the minutia possibly sometimes that we do.
So what was your impression, overall, what's your impression of the Independent Democratic Conference? Do they serve a good purpose? Or?
I really don't think they do. I've been opposed to them, that people pick teams. And our system in the United States and in New York in particular has been two generally teams, Democrat and Republican. And if you run under the pretense of being one or the other and then switch, I think that's somewhat of a disservice to the voter. So if you choose to be other than in the Democratic Party, for instance, then go to the Republican Party.
So the same with Simcha Felder, who conferences with
I think Simcha and I have become very good friends. He's got a wonderful, wonderful sense of humor and a sense of balance that we need in the Senate. And he didn't pretend at all.
No.
He said, I represent a constituency, and I will wait to see which side presents me with the best possible situation for my constituency. I've chatted with him about it. I have no problems with that because he told me beforehand.
He told his constituents beforehand, too.
Right, that's more important than he told them than me. And with the independent, the IDC, I worked hard for several of them, went door to door, contributed money, and they turned around and said, no, we don't want you anymore. We want another team, our team. And really if they had stayed as Democrats, that would have meant the Democrats controlled. Democrats would be chairman. They would have more individual power, more power to present, I think, progressive legislation, and this holds it up.
Now, in the Senate, do the Democrats and Republicans pretty much vote on the same way on 98% of the bills, or?
Yeah, that's misleading because there are a lot of bills to allow one more judge in the village of such and such, or to take a sales tax extender that had been in existence for 50 years, and you vote for it. I would say there's 10% of the bills we take up are real substantive, core value, philosophical difference bills. And that's what you should call out and determine what percentage votes for and against.
Have you ever done that?
No, I haven't. But, it's a good question, and why haven't I? It would give a much better guide to where people stand on issues.
I'm a stats type of person, and I noticed that you are pretty senior amongst all senators.
Right.
They got the fifth, you're sixth in seniority, or fifth in seniority. Or
that says two things, and we don't know which. We know one of them is true. It means I'm getting older, and secondly, it means that I should know more because I've been there and I've experienced more. But that's a harder one to calculate than the age
But
factor.
looking to the future, actually, it could be a very powerful position, what Mark is saying. I mean, the seniority, you could be ultimately the Senate Majority Leader.
Well, I want to make sure I make a difference. And I go there, I went there more of an older age, and I have certain goals and that I try to live with and by, and that's to make sure that we have a fair, equitable system for education.
You know, that's a really interesting question because I know it's in the news about, like age limits there are on judges. And, of course, we're on the Jewish view, so I have to bring in my rabbinical Jewish position. And there really isn't any. I mean, on the contrary, again, in society, oh, you're an old fogey, you're ancient, to be a teenager, they're the smartest people in the world. But really, in Judaism, it goes the opposite. A person who's older has more experience and has more wisdom, is more settled in their thinking. So, it's an interesting issue today, but I just, from a Jewish perspective, it's not like, oh, you're 65, you're 70 years old, you can't be a judge, which is the law in, in New York State.
And coincidentally, I have a brother who's reaching the age of 70. He's a Supreme Court judge.
Yeah.
Tom Breslin.
Yes, Tom Breslin.
And they say no more. I mean, that's
And
right.
he's going to be forced to retire.
Well, he gets some extensions, but he'll be on that extension period, and he'll be retired.
And you mentioned your family. So your brother was in the judicial branch, you're in the legislative branch, and you had another brother, Michael Breslin, in the executive branch. So you had all three branches covered, which was, I thought, pretty special.
And it was a special day years ago, probably 15 years ago, that Albany Law School, they have a Judge Jackson lecture series. And Judge Jackson was an Albany Law graduate who became a Supreme Court judge and presided over the Nazi trials in Germany.
Sure. No, I
Very
know,
famous and bright guy.
I've heard of him.
And they have an award each year, and they gave it to my two brothers and I, and we lectured on the differences between each area of government to see who had the hardest job. Now, who do you think has the county executive, the judge, or the legislator? Do you think I would pick the legislator? It's by far the county executive.
Oh, by far, yeah.
By far. The judge, I think, comes in third.
So if your brother Michael retired,
Which he did.
right?
Yep.
And then your brother Tom may, without the extensions, may
Right.
have to retire, and then you are 74 years old.
Right.
Are you the youngest of the three?
No, Tommy is.
Oh, really?
Yes,
Okay.
Tommy is.
Yeah,
And I have
well-
other siblings as well.
Oh, okay. So are you looking at that?
I think that we're all concerned that we want to make sure that we remain active, vital,
Yeah,
and contribute to society, and I feel better health than I did 15 years ago. So I haven't even thought about that.
Good.
I agree with you, Rabbi. I don't think age is a barrier. They have, in a lot of states, term limits.
Right.
The voter should be able to come in and vote against you.
Right.
And if you have term limits, that means the staff people that you don't elect are there way beyond the legislators, and they get disproportionate power. They know where everything's at.
Now, the average age in the Senate now is 60 years old.
Wow.
Now, when you came, it was probably a little older than that. when you
I think
got
you're
in
probably
there.
right.
Because they had Owen Johnson and they had a few others.
Yeah.
Who were,
John Markey.
John Markey, yeah. So you had so it's 60. Now, you were 54 when you were first
That's right,
elected?
yeah.
You were my age.
Yeah.
So this is interesting.
Right.
It's not too late for me.
No, not at all.
I think you have an advantage, because, well.
But the
nothing
average,
from-
the average number of years that a senator stays in the Senate is 10.
Is it really?
Yeah.
I guess I was going to address, because, Mark and I probably have every politician in the Capital District literally on our show interviewing them. And, come from New York, so that when they're here in the Capitol, so our studio's a block and a half away.
Right.
And it's very difficult for them, to be away from your family for 2-3 days. And I know a local politician says, I laugh at them, I have it easy. I go home every night, and to be away for 2-3 days from your family for half a year, it's difficult.
90 to 100 days living in a hotel or in a different setting. That's a tremendous burden on people, and it's a consideration if they have a big family. Do I want to give up that interaction with young children, or my bride or my husband, and do that?
There are some people who live in Westchester who go home And
Every day?
well, well, they go home for an event that might be
Yeah.
on a session
Well, I know
day.
George Latimer goes home frequently because
Yeah.
he likes to campaign and he's
Right.
always worried and does a great job.
You know, there are others, and they just don't find it an issue. It's the Long Island, New York City
New York
folks
City, I
and
was
the
gonna say.
Cattaraugus and the Western New York folks
Right.
that really have
Can't
a
commute.
big issue, you know.
Right.
But, you know, I think it would be a great vacation away from the family for 2-3 days.
Mara,
Well, I think you'd get tired of it very quickly.
Probably.
And I like the normalcy of being in my home and being, less than 10 miles and 10 minutes away from the Capitol.
yeah, so
Well-
that maybe I'm just saying people, that contributes to people just cutting out. They had enough, I served
Right.
the public.
Oh, is that what you, okay.
Well,
yeah.
that's what I was thinking,
Because
that
they're-
maybe people
well,
don't want to stay that long. I did my service to the community, and it is a burden.
Right.
Yeah, there are people
That traveling is a
who
burden.
feel that way. Are you, what would you like people to know about you that you think they don't know about you at this point?
Oh my gosh, I think because I live in Albany and I work in Albany, people know a lot about me and
Yeah.
know who I am. I think before I became a senator, I was attracted to the position because I was involved as a practicing lawyer, so I, in theory, know things about the workings of the legislature, but I was involved in projects, homeless shelters, halfway houses, and a lot of social action type areas. And I honestly didn't think we were doing enough. And I thought that we could contribute more. I sometimes question that because we still have an increasing number of homeless. I know just 2 weeks ago, we approached the number of one night of 60,000 homeless in New York City.
Yeah, it's a tremendous.
I know.
Well, that's like this population, almost, that's 2/3 of the population of the city of Albany.
Right.
Just being homeless, just being out on the
They
street.
say even in
Imagine that.
Albany, we had one, do you know the number of the Albanians that are?
Homeless?
Well, there's,
No.
there's a tremendous, before I became a senator, I was the vice president of the Interfaith Partnership for the Homeless in Albany. And so I had a great deal of contact with the homeless shelters. And at every given night, there's, I bet, upwards of 1,000.
Yeah, that's why I was thinking 1,000, 1,500.
I
That's a
know,
lot of
right.
people that,
Right.
even for our small city, like Mark's saying, we're nothing compared to New York City. But, 1,000 people that don't have a place to
Right.
go. I mean, it's-
Yeah.
A lot of them are who have mental problems, lack of skills, no jobs, have lost a job, have a major illness in their family,
yeah.
don't have control over whether they're homeless or not. And that's where we have an obligation.
Which committee in the Senate deals with homelessness? Is it housing, or is it?
There's
some other-
housing, there's social services, there's a number of different
Yeah,
I'm the ranking Democrat on insurance, that touches it. There's health that touch it.
okay.
So,
Wow, so that, yeah, you are, okay, so you're ranking
I guess
on-
another thing that a lot of people wouldn't, my friends wouldn't know because they don't want to hear about it. I just stepped down as the president of the National Conference of Insurance Legislators. I was the longest serving president. All insurance law is state-based. So there's 50 sets of laws in the 50 states, and we have a national organization. And I was named president 2.5 years ago and served as president for 2 years. And it really encompasses lots of things that are very uninteresting on a television show,
Yes.
very uninteresting if you're in any kind of a social gathering, but they're important. They're important to each state to make sure
Can-
that we.
I want to ask you this question because it's been sort of prevalent in the legislature. How do you rectify or justify or conduct yourself in terms of campaign contributions and what you would receive, what you wouldn't receive, and things like that? Because I know you're a highly principled person,
Right.
so that's why I'm
No, I don't, I honestly, you have to have campaign contributions. I try not to make any direct ask of people that if they'd like to contribute, and so I don't know as much about them as I should, because I don't review all the contributions. And I would never, if they have a major issue, some group has a major issue,
yeah.
I just choose not to be soliciting dollars from
So
them
do
in
you-
any way.
Do you purposely avoid going to insurance companies for contributions?
I don't go to them.
You don't?
They
You
do.
purposely-
They do contribute,
Right,
but I don't.
on their own?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
But do you have fundraising? I mean, because...
Oh, I have fundraisers.
You
People
do.
can go to fundraisers.
No, I'm
But
just
I
asking you.
don't, I don't pick up. Now,
Oh.
there's situations I've heard of a particular interest group will go into a legislator and spend a half an hour talking about how they really need this passed. And then the interest group might leave, and then they get a phone call from that legislator a half hour later on the cell phone asking for money. That's over the line. You shouldn't do that. And you can get along without doing that. And you know, we got to make sure that we do a number of things to clean up the way we do business. I think they should be government-financed elections, because it takes it out of the hands of asking for money from insurance companies or other things. It also makes the challenger more competitive because you're more of on an equal balance. That's one way to do it. And there's a second way of making sure that when we redistrict every 10 years. It's because the population changes in an area. And the legislature decides how we redistrict. So in the Senate, it's Republican. They just redistricted me a couple of years ago and gave me more Democrats. Not because they wanted me to have more Democrats. I'm surrounded by Republicans.
Right.
They each wanted less Democrats. And in the Assembly, they want more Democrats
Right,
there, where
sure.
they have over a 50-vote lead already in
Right,
terms
they
of
got
numbers. But
veto-proof
each
majority in the
each
Assembly.
house approves the other houses.
Yeah.
And I think that redistricting should be done by an independent body that determines and carves out competitive districts, and those competitive districts then would come up with good candidates, and there'd probably be less seniority too. They'd be more competitive. And you wouldn't have, as we have in the House of Representatives in the United States, 80 elected who are just immune to being thrown out of office. They have such control of their offices. 80 of them. So they hold their breath and they say to leadership, I'm voting my way.
Well, I think in this area, we had, Stratton, McNulty, Tonko
Yeah.
for how many, for decades.
Absolutely.
So this area is a safe Democratic district.
It is.
It's carved out for the, whatever number you want to call it, CD 20, 21.
Right. I have to remember that, Mark, because they've changed the number. Your district remains the same, but you have a new number.
Right.
And you're used to saying 42, which I had for a while, 46 I had for a while, and now 44. And it would be easy to make a mistake on occasion.
So what do you see as the big issue coming up for the next session?
I think education is always
Always.
at the top. 750 school districts, there's increasing problems in educating our children. Our children come from many foreign countries. We have an obligation to give them a good, solid education, and it costs more. Families are less solid than they were in the past. Creates a greater burden.
What do you see as a solution for the tuition tax credit issue? I'm taking that you're not really in favor of tuition tax
I haven't
credit.
been, no, and I think it's I would like to see it separated more and more targeted towards specific things that you could say that's non-religious.
Oh, okay.
And they've done that in states very successfully.
So there is a model out there that you would feel
They're
comfortable with?
absolutely,
Okay.
yeah. And to take it away in other states, they'll use the busing of children. That shouldn't be considered in any way religious. We have to bus all of our children and make it more inclusive with both the private and the public. So there's ways.
Okay. And other issues that...
There's, again, the quality of the legislator, and we have to, and the quality of the legislature has been under question. And we have to get rid of any sort of suggestion that they're doing something improper. And we have to have strict, I was the first piece of legislation to say anyone convicted of a pension, you lose your, or convicted of a felony, you lose your pension. it should, and it seems to me pretty simple.
It does.
But people then would say, legislator, what about my family? Well, you should have started your family beforehand.
That's right.
And so it's a constant battle. But we have to be above reproach. We shouldn't be evaluated on the same as an ordinary citizen. If we're going to undertake that responsibility to the public, we got to make sure that we do things properly. And if we don't do it, my mother used to always say, you make your reputation by the people you hang around with.
That's right.
And if you're hanging around with bad people, you ought to say, what am I doing here? And I think the legislature, when I think of some of the quality individuals we've taken in the last few years, it's a lot better than it was 10 years ago.
Yeah, I'll tell you, it is better than 10 years ago, yeah. In the Senate, I don't know, the Assembly sort of, this is like the first year, this past year, where no one had a conviction or indictment.
I hadn't even thought of it.
This past, that's how low the bar is. It's a successful session when no one's been indicted.
I don't think I'm going to integrate that into one of my speeches when I'm bragging about how well we're doing.
But I just want, so tell me about you're of counsel, your private practice.
Right.
You're of counsel to the firm Barclay Damon.
Yep.
Is that Matt Damon?
No, I wish it was. That would be fun. It used to be Hiscock Barclay.
Okay, so it's Doug Barclay's firm?
Doug
who's
Barclay.
A former state senator.
And former ambassador to El Salvador.
Right.
And it's a modest...
And his son is the assemblyman.
Right.
Right. Okay.
Wonderful guy.
Yeah. Will
Barclay.
Yeah.
And I have a profession as a lawyer. I dabble in it now. I only spend a little bit of time in it because if I, God forbid, if I wasn't reelected, I would have a skill, and I have a skill that I can't be threatened about. No one can say, if you don't do this, we're going to vote you out of office. I'm okay. I was okay before I got here. I'll be okay if I leave.
Right.
I don't do any practice that relates to anything I do in the legislature. So I don't represent companies that have business with the legislature. I do estate planning and probate, things like that. And I'm very comfortable doing it.
No.
If they pass a rule, because in the Constitution it says we're a part-time legislature.
Yeah.
If they pass a rule, you can't, I won't.
No, that's the way it goes.
Right.
But they shouldn't make it retroactive and say,
No.
that, we gave you a permission before, but now we're saying no, and you already did that before, so therefore you're guilty. Which happens.
It's prospective, not
retrospective.
Right.
Which has happened because even I mean this in a different vein totally, but the cleanup of the Hudson River at GE in the 1950s, the federal government gave them permission to do the dumping. Now, fast forward 40 years, and the federal government, or 50 years, the federal government saying, oh no, you have to go pay for cleanup that we gave you permission to do.
Right.
So
science changes.
Science changes and philosophy.
And we're having that whole debate when we talk about global warming. I sure as heck wouldn't want to be living on the shore in Fort Lauderdale right now.
Okay.
And I think all of us, when we experience some of the things, Sandy and Irene, and storms we've experienced, I never felt those storms when I was young growing up in this area. And I don't remember the heat being the way it is on a day like this, which should be fall. That I think there is a change.
Yeah, no, it's a slight change, but it's a change. And, meteorologists will say that this is a short period of time in the expanse of what they look at in millennia.
Right.
So.
Right. And we always I see them once a week, those glaciers melting.
Yeah,
falling.
Well, the polar bears don't have enough to eat or enough places to rest, and
I'm seeing these geese that used to fly from Canada to Florida, and it would cost them less than it would for us to do the same. Now these geese fly from Canada to our area, and I wish they'd go to Florida.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah.
They stay just here? It's warm enough for here?
Right.
I don't know.
Yes.
So what was I'm just trying to figure out the best way to... on the casino gambling, you were in favor of Hard Rock Cafe going to Rensselaer.
Yes, I was. Yeah.
And could you tell me, is this a blessing in disguise that we didn't have a casino so close?
I'd prefer we didn't have. I don't think add, I think of it as a finite dollar.
Yeah.
And if it's a finite dollar, that finite dollar goes to rent, to help educate your children and take care of your family. And if you're gambling it, it's less money that you have to do that, to give your family a quality of life.
Have you been to Hard Rock cafes around the world? No?
Sorry.
I have a whole pile of T-shirts. of
You've
the
been
Hard
to
Rock
all
Cafe.
those Hard Rock
Oh,
cafes?
I love them. Yeah.
You do?
Yeah.
So you like the gambling?
No, I like Hard Rock Cafe, which is a
I don't
place.
even know the difference.
Oh, Hard Rock Cafe has memorabilia from
Okay.
various musicians and music in the music industry.
Okay.
On their walls. So when you go to any sort of entertainment venue, there's a Hard Rock Cafe that they all have different, because they go to these auctions and buy these things,
Right.
and they put them in the case
Yeah.
in their restaurants. So
Yeah. I actually think all these casinos being built are going to have a difficult time because everybody's doing the same thing. There's going to be a casino in Springfield, 100 miles away from here.
Right.
There's casinos in Pennsylvania right along the border in
Yeah.
in the southern area of our state. There's casinos in Connecticut. There's
Right.
casinos in New Jersey
Right.
that incidentally have the name of Trump on them, and they haven't done so well. And
Well, he just licenses his
and
name.
we all go
He
to
doesn't run them.
we all go to stores in the morning to buy a paper, a cup of coffee, and we see someone ahead of us buying tickets,
yeah.
which I've never. And they're there. They go into their car, they peel them off.
Mm.
They win some, go back in, or they lose it. They drive away sad, and I see what they're paying,
Mhm.
and it's a substantial sum of money.
It is.
I agree
And-
with you there. Of just, there's fun is fun. I mean, if you have the extra money to
Right,
have
yeah.
a nice weekend, I know people do that, but when people are like down to their bottom dollar hoping to get $1 million,
$1 and a dream,
that's
right?
it's not
I
right.
buy on my birthday. I buy a couple of lottery tickets. That's it.
Yeah,
And not
we
every
went
year.
over here,
And not
right?
every year. Yeah, I've won.
And
$50
if
here or
it's
there. That's it.
if the payoff is 700 million, and I have a 1 in 10 billion chance of doing it, I'll occasionally buy a ticket.
Just
Yeah.
help out the education system.
I don't look at the numbers the next day. I wait to make sure it's in another state. I said, don't bother.
I want to ask. I want to let the viewers know that in this past session, you've had 5 bills signed into law by the governor.
Right.
Oh, that's
I
pretty
think
good.
that's.
Yeah.
I think that's really good.
I've generally been the Democratic leader in bills signed, and over the years and in total, and there's several others that will still be signed.
Still coming
Yeah.
that haven't
Yeah.
been there that are going to be signed. Well, that mazel tov on that. So, and then there are several bills which were one house, 4 or 5 that are one house bills which is
The bridge bill, the naming
Bridge
of the
bill.
bridge.
the Charles Stern Memorial Bridge.
Yes.
Now, I think I knew his son Adam.
Right, sure. Phil Steck has it in the
In the
assembly.
assembly,
And
and he can't move it.
no, I passed it in the Senate.
Yeah, I see
We
that.
And I don't know what the problem is, but it
Now,
seemed to me
why have a highway named after him? And what was his?
Charles Stern.
Yeah.
Phil Steck said he was a fine young person with excellent credentials, and I accepted his point of view.
Oh, okay.
I forget the specifics
Okay.
of them.
He was a member of the Jewish community, and I knew
Mhm.
his ex-wife lived next door to me when I lived in Oxford Heights, so
Oh, wow.
that's how I knew the Stern family.
Right. And I grew up within the Jewish community, growing up in Pine Hills in Albany.
Uh-huh.
And it was a wonderful, wonderful age when I grew up.
Yeah, well, it was very different back then
Yeah.
also. We had many more Jews. So what do you think would be your most significant bill from this past session that you really like?
Oh my gosh.
I-
I never ever look at them that way.
Oh, okay.
I look at movements
Just
within.
like your favorite child thing?
No, movements within. Did we push education sufficiently? Did we fine tune education sufficiently to
Okay.
get little target groups of people who had needs? In the insurance area, are we making sure that health insurance is as affordable as it can be? And it certainly isn't.
No.
One of my major pieces several years ago was a piece of legislation dealing with the health department, the insurance department review increases in healthcare costs by HMOs. And the HMOs used to be able to file a sheet of paper and they get a rate increase.
Mm.
Our legislation changed it to, you had to prove that these rate increases were necessary.
Okay.
Little ones that you can't talk about because people don't want to talk about insurance,
No,
but they're important.
they're important
They're
and make a
important.
difference.
Yeah.
So what do you want to bring up that we didn't know enough to ask you about?
No, it's to emphasize what we did talk about, emphasize that we have the ability to not police ourselves in the legislature, but we have the ability to produce a very thoughtful, honest, deliberative body, and we're moving in that direction.
All right, well, continued success.
Thank you very
All right,
much.
thank you. Do success. You've been a great legislator and a friend of the Jewish community for 20 years, so we wish you added success and coming up and
More
all
than
the good
20
things.
years, more than 20
Yeah,
years.
yeah, it's
Mazel
funny, yeah.
tov, another 20.
There you go. We'll take another 20, but with good health.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Do I point in the camera?
It's all right.